Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew. And tonight on Friday Night Knives, we have the Kizer Bulldog. This one is the micarta version. It has their, what they call it, the clutch lock for their crossbar lock. And it is, say with me, there we go. Show Designs in 154 cm steel. Let's get some of these measurements, because this is an interesting little design here with some flavors that kind of look like some others and go along with it, but we'll talk about that there. About 7¼ tip to tail, and a little over 3, about 3 1/8 tip to scale. Decently sized, without a doubt. But let us get some weight on here. I'll let that zero in. All right. So there we go. 3.5 ounces. 3.52, whichever way you want to look at it. It's about 3.5 ounces. Not super lightweight. That I would consider that to be under 3. But not super heavyweight either. There's a lot in that 4 ounces, right? It's kind of a middleweight class there, which may or may not be a deal breaker for me. It's in that part that I can wear it with some of my heavier stuff, but it's just a little too heavy for my athletic shorts or the light nylon type stuff, hiking shorts and the like. So there's a little bit there. All right, let's get to the relative measurements as well. Ooh, first things first, though, I almost forgot in our quest for measuring. Blade stock, 0.10. That one's pretty thin, about 2.5 millimeters maybe. And then see if I can get behind the edge. This one's always rough to get exactly the same, so take it with just a tiny bit of a grain of salt. Trying to get it right there behind the edge. That's pretty good. 14 thousandths behind the edge. Pretty slim. Deep carry pocket clip. I should get a look there. So yeah, there's a lot to like in it. And it has this interesting sheep's foot shape. But let's get the Spyderco sandwich. There it is with the Paramilitary 2. As you can see, similar blade length. Hand space is similar. Overall size slightly smaller. Interesting little bit. Now to the Para 3. This is the lightweight version, slightly larger blade, similar hand space. Again, we're looking at things like that. It's a little bit smaller than the Paramilitary 2 and pretty right on with the Para 3 lightweight. Slightly more blade and right in between each. Quite the interesting gap filler, so to speak. All right, and of course, now it is just a blur. As you can see, lots of hand space. The blur has a hand to blade ratio that is really, really good with that recurve and such. And not just any leak, but random leak. As you can see, hand space again, very large. A fair amount of blade length in it. Kind of cool in what it is. It's very different in its shape. And there it is with the Benchmade Bug Out, another perennial bestseller, and this Avivi Elementum, another great classic basic knife. Lots of hand space, good blade length to hand space ratio. So there's those. All right, and of course, as we know, here it is compared to my Wiener, and though it may be longer by just a tad bit, it is droopy and does not have the classiness that my titanium Wiener has. All right, so damn nice. Design, aesthetics, mechanics, noteworthy points, intended purpose, cost to value ratio, expectations, and if there are any requests that would make it damn nicer. So first things first, design. It is unusual, but it does... There are a couple other designs that are out there. It's almost got this pistol grip with a very deep curve, and then the drop gives it a very, very saber-like feel in the grip, where you have this kind of flat spot that you're up against, And then this long sweeping blade out here. Very good in the saber grip. Absolutely fantastic. In fact, super comfortable even when you choke up and your thumb reaches into that curve. It is fantastic for this kind of control and grip. Gorilla Grip gives you similar. It tends to go up a little bit in the Gorilla Grip where that can reach into the thumb recess? Yeah, whichever you want to call it. This little hollow in the palm there. Closed size is pretty good. The sheep's foot, the drop sheep's foot, gives you a ton of knuckle clearance. So on a simulated surface, you get a lot, right? So it's there. And the ergonomics in the pinch grip, it's all right. It tends to be better if you pinch grip or overhand grip kind of up. It's not the best, you can do it, but really it just lends itself to this kind of grip extraordinarily well with lots of control. There's even some jimping out here to really get that scoring right out on the very tip with some gap right there. So there's plenty of choke up here. Great for this, and it lends itself to it. So it's a really good working grip on the design. As far as ergonomics, 154 cm steel. The steelless hasn't gone out, but for those, it's one of the best budget steels you get. It has only been a budget steel for a couple years. Just a few years ago, 154 cm was up there with other super steels. It was considered a high-end steel that could go either way. It was mid-tier to high-tier. It was one of those. Now it's a budget steel, and it is one of the best. Just a really good all-around, and its particle metallurgy version is also, for a long time, was the best well-rounded steel you could get until the arrival of some of the newest particle super steels. So very, very good in that. The aesthetics, you may or may not like it. It doesn't have that super knife feel, but it definitely has a tool look to it. Closed is relatively easy. It's got the same kind of up and then double wave sort of look to it. The deep carry goes all the way. The micarta isn't contoured, so it gives it a very, very distinct flat look, which is nice for pictures, and that you see the whole outline and it's not contoured or curved. But it gives it a lot of space, especially in something like the saber grip. That's a lot of flat control surfaces for your fingers to rest on the top edge, and some people like that quite a bit. And this has a lot of it, and it works particularly well in this grip to have that kind of control. When you're in the full saber grip like that extra flat control surface for your finger, your thumb, and your fingers to really provide leverage to work against is quite cool. I like the looks of it. Again, some people may not. Just for a little bit of, let's say, something to compare to for comparison, the Militar that is basically straight and this with all of the curves, both serve a different type of ergonomic purpose, and this one's nice. The mechanics on this, it's broken in, but it was like this from the beginning. Haven't had a reason to clean it out yet or go in and change the tension on the spring. It's pretty good out the box. It's really drop shut, but controllable via the crossbar quite nicely. Mechanics on it, it's really hard to complain. That's, I'm double checking, yeah. Bearings in there with the crossbar lock. It's just super drop shut out of there and really good. Noteworthy points on this. It's an unusual ergonomic and geometric configuration for a knife that lends itself well particularly to the saber grip and this kind of motion, long sweeping cuts where you're in this, or down where you're going up, just the tip. Lends itself to all day kind of work like this for multiple iterations of a similar task. This does provide a lot of comfort, and that is a noteworthy point on a budget, on a inexpensive, not cheap, but inexpensive knife that is obviously designed to do tasks and do work as a tool. It does that well, which brings me to its intended purpose. This is an EDC knife, but this is a user knife, right? This is absolutely a package piercer. That is a robust and well supported tip out there that goes to a very acute point with thin behind the edge. It is a cardboard carver. In whatever configuration you want to hold it, it goes down, and it does work very well. It is a shrink wrap slicer. All of the different configurations that allow you choke up and control allow you to also really get into those shrink wraps and bubble wrap type stuff, the hard plastic closures, and utilize this knife to open them up safely without the push that a lot of unsharpened or not quite as good tools or being way back may get once it starts to move. So this does that very well. And of course, whether you do it unusually for a lot of knives, the saber grip isn't so great for the envelope eviscerating as this one. It does it in the reverse grip as well, but it's actually just easier to flip your hand and open up the envelope like this. And this is unusual for most knives, as you tend to flip them over in an upside down grip and just slice it like that. This one is more comfortable to do like this, and it's just maintaining a decent grip. You don't have to flip it around or do anything weird. So it actually is very much an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire, and you could all day long just making slices. It'll do that all day long. Cost to value ratio is right in that $70 to $80 range. A lot of these knives are. It delivers a lot of value for the cost. So I'm gonna give it a solid 92. I'm a big fan of Contour. It's got the inset liners. Let's see here. Definitely some skeletonization. So there's a lot of value there. Could it be a little cheaper? Yeah, probably. There's other things. The inset here for the deep carry, the flat top screws, the pivot that's down set to give it that really tight closure that fits well within a profile. And while it's still a little tall, it still fits in a pocket quite nicely. Right up against the seam. Most seams run down. The pocket sits at an angle. It usually does just fine sitting in a pocket like that, and it holds quite well. And I give it a high to value. Expectations or requests? Man, I wish this was sort of semi-contoured, maybe just a little bit up top where it stays high and flat with just a little bit of rounding on there, but then comes down to a more narrow grip at the bottom where this fits easier into the finger joints as opposed to the finger flats. For me, it makes a more comfortable knife. This only kind of fits the flats of my fingers, where I can find a lot more grips where it fits the crooks, so to speak. But it does that's okay. I would like to see the S35N or something like that could also be a steel that would do very well in this configuration for long and a higher bit, but you ruin some of the cost of value because honestly, 154 cm is a great steel. One of the reasons it's okay, it is almost as high edge retention as D2. Its corrosion resistance is extraordinarily high. Its toughness is quite decent for the edge retention and the carbon content and chromium content. It does very well. This is an extraordinarily well-balanced knife, which actually takes most of my quests. It's just like, you might get something. I wouldn't necessarily, if this and an S35 yen version that was $50 or $60 more expensive were both available, I would pick this. 154 cm is good enough for the price, and I would consider it a better value than a higher end S35 VN blade. So just to recap real quick, we have the Kizer Bulldog in 154 cm and micarta. The design, it is unusual with a lot of nice little quirks that are ergonomic in most, and some aesthetics, even though I enjoy it. It gives the impression of a tool more than a knife. The mechanics are really hard. Kizer has nailed their clutch lock. They've got their tuning down on this really well, where it's more about the user getting the timing than it is anything else. They have this very well tuned right out the box. It's noteworthy for its design, its steel choice, and its value, and its intended purpose as an everyday carry tool. And it does that very well. It has a high value for the cost, putting it in the 92 range in my scale. And I expected it to be good. It is even better. This is actually an outstanding tool. This is quickly looking to become my go-to knife for just carrying around where this doesn't work, for just carrying around everyday tool use. And as far as requests, there's not. As far as materials, the only request I would possibly have is that heel right there is sharp. I have a couple of bites. One has already healed. I have a couple of bites just from that heel where I happened to just roll up into it on some part of my finger when I was trying different grips and stuff. And it is sharp and pointy, and it will dig in. So that little thing is probably the biggest thing to take a look at. And once that goes, yeah, it's all right. That maybe a little rounding right there would be just a little round off to an edge once it's sharpened or something. That's probably the biggest complaint or request I have, is some sort of rounding off of that little heel right there, because that is right where your finger goes and it is sharp enough to dig.